You ever neighbor? You ever have a neighbor that's just so miserable and he's an old guy and he's got a shotgun sitting on the front porch saying, "Get off my property." All this stuff. He's pissed off at the world. That's Goose Gossage. Goose Gossage banned from Yankee spring training. Was not invited this year. And you can bet your bottom dollar he won't be invited anytime soon as long as the current regime is in power. And he has admitted to being disruptive the past 2 years. He's obviously made comments about how baseball has changed due to analytics, the bat flips, the lack of teaching young players the fundamentals. And he went up and down on Cashman in the Daily News. Goose, who's obviously in the Hall of Fame with a Yankee cap, said this: Cashman has ruined the, quote, honor and privilege, end quote, of being invited to camp. He questioned Cashman's manhood, called Cashman a little weasel who has the Steinbrenner family tricked, said new manager Aaron Boone is a good baseball man, but his hands will be tied by Cashman. And he stated Cashman has no use for coaches and suggested the GM get a uniform and manage the club himself. This is a quote from the 66-year-old Goose, and quote, if Cashman had any balls, and he doesn't, he would have an analytical guy manage. Don't think it hasn't crossed his mind, but he doesn't have the balls to do it, end quote. So it's that kind of venom, folks, that the Yankees are trying to avoid. And by keeping Goose away, they will do that. He has for a while now rallied against the showboating that occurs in today's games, the inability of some relievers to throw more than one inning. And now he's including Cashman in the group of people that have made baseball too much about the numbers, in his opinion. In 2016, if you remember, he tore to shreds Jose Bautista for bat flips, and he called him a disgrace. Last spring, he said Mariano Rivera shouldn't be compared to him because Rivera, who is the all-time leader in saves, worked one inning while Gossage often threw multiple innings. This is another quote. It was an honor and a privilege to be invited to camp by Mr. Steinbrenner. It's an honor and a privilege, but to look at Cashman every day, I can't look at him. He's a disgrace to the Yankees, end quote. And according to Gossage, Cashman told him last spring, Cashman told Gossage, the game has passed you by. A message was left, obviously, for Brian Cashman. He didn't return. Daily News, New York Post, all these New York media outlets returned, phoned him, didn't return any phone calls. Gossage also said this, another quote. Everybody knows Cashman and I had differences for the last 2 years. I'm not a big fan of Cashman. I don't know what I did to him to feel the way he does. I don't have respect for him. He doesn't have any respect for older people in baseball. Now, the Yankees in the past have spoken to Goose about trying to kind of curb his comments in the past couple of years, but those conversations obviously have fallen on deaf ears because Goose is just being Goose at this point. Another quote, with George, there was always controversy, but you can't say anything about Cashman and the little weasel that he is. He has the Steinbrenner family tricked. This is some hatred right here. This is some hatred. Hal Steinbrenner had this to say. He said he's not going to comment in depth about this, except to say that Goose's comments were grossly inaccurate. Every single one that I heard was inaccurate. Now, he says this about Aaron Boone. This is Goose now, and this is very interesting. Gossage says, quote, about Boone, his hands will be tied Why doesn't Cashman get a jersey and jump into the dugout if he doesn't think coaches are necessary? End quote. Now, this is a fascinating thing because as much as I don't disagree with all that he's saying, I do disagree with all these old players about screaming about the bat flips and screaming about all this stuff. Guys, it's called passion in the game. It's called passion in sports. That's what it is nowadays. Deal with it. I love the bat flips. Listen, if you're going to bat flip up by 10 in a regular season game in the 6th inning, no. But you do what Batista did. With all of the heat and the passion that was going on in that inning in that game against Texas, I'd bat flip. I mean, it adds a feel to the game. To sit there and criticize Rivera also. Again, he's comparing generations. It's a different generation. Every generation of sports is different. What I do agree with Gossage on this is, and I don't think it's just Cashman, I think baseball executives across the land are trying to kind of control the games themselves with all the analytics and with all the numbers and the computers. And I think that's something that we're seeing around baseball. It's not just Cashman. But it does make you wonder, though, with Joe Girardi. I know he was Binder Joe. But why would you just let the guy go after 10 seasons? He got to his 7th game of an ALCS. It was sort of out of nowhere. And to bring another guy in that has had no coaching experience, it does make you wonder if Cashman wanted to pick a puppet. And really, the final all we heard about was the final 2 was Boone and Carlos Beltran, both with no coaching experience. So maybe Brian Cashman did want to have a guy that he can control and this and that. That's baseball, unfortunately. I mean, you look at Brian Kenny on MLB Network. We're going to talk about the war. We're going to talk about this. Nobody cares about the war. Nobody cares about these numbers. Just stop it. Cut it out. Nobody cares. You're not impressing anyone with your numbers, throwing numbers out there. Nobody cares. Stop it. But I do agree with Gossage on that, and I can see his point there. I don't agree with his comments about the game of baseball. I mean, if anything, I mean, have we seen Gossage go off about what they're trying to do with the pace of the game and speed it up and all this? He's going off about bat flips, and he's going off about relievers with 1 inning. And you've had this in sports where you have an old player, he's controversial, and you kind of say, okay, just get away. Has the game passed him by? It's tough to say that about someone like Goose Gossage, but at the same time, I think the game is passing a lot of these older players by, and these older people by. But Brian Cashman really said that to Goose Gossage to his face. That is so fucked up on so many levels. Does Cashman look like a weasel? Yeah. We heard stories over the years about Cashman not being genuine? Yeah. He didn't handle the Torrey situation good. He didn't handle the Girardi situation good. I don't think, in my opinion. He didn't handle A-Rod good. He is a little bit of a sneak. But you can't underestimate he's a damn good baseball general manager. And we'll see. We'll see what Aaron Boone does this year, and we'll see what everything happens this year. Hopefully, listen, maybe Goose and Cash speak. But at the same time, I think it's best off if Goose went away for a little bit. He's like the Bret Hart of baseball. He's always bitching about something. I think it's time for Goose Gossage, as great as he was, to just take a time out for a little bit.